Hello, coming to you from the blooming city of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, blossoming Bryce Ann. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a bi-weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we play that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 82. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Intrigue out of the dust and a contributor will dust off Cite. On the reaction segment, I discuss positive board game interactions on social media. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Under Falling Skies. On the Obscure Bryce game segment, I review Lost Worlds of Josh Kirby. And we wrap up the episode with my top 10 games that stood the test of time countdown. I had a chance to bring Intrigue, a 1994 negotiation game from publishers Amigo and Mayfair and designer Stefan Dora out of the dust. I last played it about 10 years ago. I have to estimate the dust level on this one because it goes back from before I started logging plays. This is one of the first games I added to my collection when I was first starting to get into the hobby seriously. I picked it up for $1 from the Gen Con Live auction during a short-lived phase where I bought anything if it was $1. Most of those games I bought on an ill-advised whim are no longer part of my collection, but Intrigue is one of the few highlights from that period. This game might have been responsible for ending a friendship, because the last time I played it was with a couple my wife and I used to game frequently with, but have not gamed with since. Looking back, this was a poor choice to play with them, because they tended to take some games too seriously. But I've been thinking about this one lately and decided to risk another friendship with me and my wife's current best friends. I was confident that they had the right attitude for this game, though, and I was correct. The session went wonderfully, and it was one of the most memorable highlights of our gaming weekend together. I'd forgotten just how brilliant and elegant a design Intrigue is. It is an experience unlike any other. It really is the ultimate negotiation game and defies any diplomacy or dude fans to say otherwise. It's not a game I'm ever going to play very often, but when I'm confident of the correct makeup of a group, this will be one in the forefront of my mind when we want to play something completely different. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Zach Stockdale, username Zachdale, brought Cite out of the dust. Cite is an obscure 2010 release from the obscure publisher Le Jeu and equally obscure designer Guillaume Besançon. He writes, "This is one that I got, we played, enjoyed, and said, oh, we need to play this with this friend, and they'll love it, and then set it aside for a future game day. And then COVID hit and game days went away. Just an interesting game with cool resources. The cloth is actually cloth, stone is stone, etc., etc. Required trading, tile placement that affect both you and the players on either side, and that you can negotiate trade about as well. Most people haven't heard of it, as it seems to be a French game with English translation, but happy to have it in the collection. The fact that it is 3 to 4 player only does limit the chances it has to hit the table, though. Thanks for the contribution, Zach. Cite sounds really interesting, and with those unique resources, it's one I would love to try out sometime. I'm going to start keeping an eye out for that one. Thanks for mentioning it." Reaction segment time. There's a meme that's been circulating on social media lately that encourages people not to talk smack about games people share pictures of celebrating their purchase or first play of. That's a variation of the older illustrated meme of one person pinching the lips of another person and whispering, "Shh! Let people enjoy things!" But the sentiment is the same, and it's a sentiment I'm trying to improve on myself because I recognize I've been guilty of this on occasion in the past myself. If someone posts an exciting picture of Dead of Winter on Facebook, it is so tempting for some reason to type up a rant about what a garbage game it is. I think it's because we as human beings have powerful memories of emotional events, both positive and negative, and a natural desire to share those experiences with others for good or ill, whether the narrative is welcome or not. It's difficult and takes a concentrated mental effort to always respond to things in an appropriate way. But I become convinced it's worth the effort because to do otherwise misses the point of the hobby, which is to have fun and to have fun with others. Spreading negativity and contributing to negativity doesn't do that. But that's not to say that there isn't an appropriate place and time to voice negative opinions. Recognizing those instances is key. But I think it's better to err on the side of positivity. If someone is specifically looking for opinions, then that's obviously the right time to share them, whether positive or negative. But making sure to phrase them as opinions is essential. Saying that I personally believe Dead of Winter is a garbage game comes across much better than saying it is one, which becomes a statement of absolutism, leaving no room for discussion or dissenting opinions. That's not useful for anyone and doesn't advance any kind of conversation. So if there's ever any doubt about whether a negative opinion is appropriate in any given circumstance or not, I say save it then. Saving it for the occasion when it's definitely appropriate fosters better reaction and better interaction. And that's what board gaming is all about, interacting with ourselves, with the game, and with others. All of those interactions thrive upon strong communication. If we all worked even just a little bit to improve our communication by recognizing when to engage in the various kinds of them, then I think we in the hobby itself would benefit a great deal from that. This week on the What I've Been Playing, I'm going to tell you about Under Falling Skies, a solo-only science fiction-themed puzzle game from publisher CGE and designer Thomas Uller, who also did the innovative dungeon crawler Sanctum for them. While I enjoy most of CGE's games, I absolutely loathe their rulebooks and consider them one of the worst publishers in their capacity of creating digestible and beneficial rulebooks. It's such a turnoff for me that CGE is permanently in my try before I buy category. So despite the appealing Space Invaders-esque theme, Under Falling Skies was not one I rushed out to get upon its release. It wasn't until the game started accumulating almost universal acclaim that I decided to pull the trigger and give it a spin myself. Did I make the right decision? Here's how it works. The play area is divided into two parts, each of which consists of 5 columns. The bottom portion of the play area is the player's base, which is built up of various rooms, most of which start the game unexcavated and unusable. The upper portion is the sky, where the invading ships fall and trigger effects. At the beginning of each round, a player rolls their 5 dice and then must assign a different die to a room in each column. The pips on the die indicate the strength of the action available from that room and how many spaces any enemy ships in that column descend. If an enemy ship lands on an icon space, a negative effect occurs, which might include the ship switching columns, moving the mothership further down, or teleporting to a different spot in the sky. Each time a ship falls below the skyline, the player's base takes damage, and if the base takes too much damage, the player loses. After all dice have been placed and all enemy ships have descended, the player removes all of their dice in the order of their choice, activating the room effects the dice were in. These effects might gain energy, attack enemy ships, place automated robot dice, add modifiers to other dice, and most importantly, advance the player on the research track. If a player reaches the end of this track, then they win. The player controls an excavator piece in the base, and one of their dice each round can be placed in a room in front of it on the room path. When a player removes that die, the excavator moves forward to that space, and this opens up new and more powerful rooms for the player to use in future rounds. The last thing that happens each round is the mothership descends a level in the sky and activates a devastating mothership effect of some kind, which might move the excavator backward, the research marker backward, spawn additional enemy ships in the sky, or deal additional damage to the player base. If the mothership descends too far to a certain point in the sky, then the player immediately loses. So I found the rule book on this one adequate and serviceable, which is about as good as we can expect from CGE, I guess. There are some questionable organizational decisions, and there are enough vague points lost in large blocks of text that new players should expect the game to require a handful of plays before being confident that they are operating all aspects of the system correctly. But the game is worth this investment, which, all things considered, is not as frustrating to ultimately figure out as some of the other CGE games. Beyond this upfront investment is an engaging and addicting puzzle to explore. The game is legitimately challenging, and there is a lot of optional customization and different signs of the skyboards to use, character abilities, and mission objectives to tailor the game more or less difficult as players see fit. But whatever difficulty one decides on, it's a satisfying experience, and beating the game and defending the base is a real fulfilling feeling. It's the sort of game where you feel like you earn your victories, and that keeps you coming back for more. When combined with various cities to defend, each with their own rules, alterations, there's a ton of content to explore in the game. I was floored when I saw how much content is stuffed in that box. In fact, I consider this one of the best values to come along in board gaming since Mechs vs. Minions. You get a big bang for your $30 in Under Falling Skies, and won't feel cheated in the slightest. It should also be mentioned that a quick setup and cleanup helps this game hit the table often. So if you're looking for your next long-term satisfying solo experience, I highly recommend Under Falling Skies. Despite being early in the year, I think this is definitely going to be a shoo-in for one of my top 10 games of the year. I am hooked, and I don't see any end in sight. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week on the segment, I'm going to tell you about Lost Worlds of Josh Kirby, a science fiction-themed area control game from publisher Bard Games and designer Jordan Nichols. This is the sophomore effort from Jordan, who designed an equally obscure 2019 party game called We Need to Talk. On occasion, I'll back an inexpensive Kickstarter game just because of the art, and that's certainly the eye-catching thing about Lost Worlds at a glance. Indeed, it's the rare game that has the name of the artist as part of the title. I'm a fan of the legendary Josh Kirby and appreciate his vintage art because it evokes my favorite time period of Golden Age and Silver Age science fiction. So obviously the game looks great, but is there any substance beneath the surface? Well, here's how it works. The game revolves around world cards, each one featuring stunning Josh Kirby art. Each world has a value needed to conquer it and a value to settle it, and is worth a certain number of points either way. At the beginning of their turn, players roll 3 different colored dice and have a chance to manipulate the dice by rerolling certain colors, if desired, based upon their current title on a chart that ranges from Savior to Tyrant. Then, players use the symbols on the dice to trigger actions. The move icon moves one of the players' fleets from hyperspace to their home planet, or a fleet already on a world card to the settle or conquer side of any world in play. The settle icon moves fleets from a player's home world to the settle side of a world card, while the conquer icon moves fleets from a player's home world to the conquer side of a world card. Whenever a player has enough fleets on one side or the other of a world card to meet the relevant value, they claim the world, win its victory points, and gain access to its unique one-use ability. The last dice icon a player can use is the Renown icon, which grants players Renown cubes. These cubes can be stockpiled and spent during a player's turn to reuse world abilities, bring into play champions and dreadnoughts to assist in settling or conquering worlds, and roll the epic power die, which, as the name indicates, empowers the player in some kind of fabulous way. The objective of the game is to reach a player count-dependent plateau of victory points first. I was pleasantly surprised by this one, and it was a lot better than I was expecting. My expectations were actually pretty restrained because the publisher is new and because of their marketing focus on theme and art, but there's an appreciable amount of substance to the game. There are a lot of interesting decisions wrapped up in mitigating dice rolls, pursuing certain methods of claiming ruled cards over others, and strategically timing the use of special effects. There's some wonderful tension involved as players simultaneously accumulate the forces necessary to win worlds, and accumulate won worlds to reach the victory point plateau needed to win. I found myself becoming quite wrapped up in the experience of the game. There was an optional campaign module available with the Kickstarter, but I've got plenty of campaign games already, so I didn't go for that. But I'm super satisfied with the content available in the base game box. I'm glad I backed this, and I'm looking forward to introducing others to this obscure title in the future. This episode, I'm going to count down my top 10 games that stood the test of time of 2020. These were all new to me games of 2019 that saw repeated positive plays in 2020. Number 10, Bunny Kingdom. A friend taught me this in 2019, and I enjoyed it enough at the time to put it on my wish list. It caught my son's eyes, and they got it for me for my 2020 birthday, and it saw regular playing time throughout the year. My wife, son, and father-in-law all enjoy it, and I don't mind admitting that the adorable table presence makes me smile every time. Number 9, Wavelength. Super clever and innovative take on the guess what I'm thinking genre of party games, this turned out to be a pleasant COVID diversion for my entire family and was another one that hit the table regularly. It's super addicting too. It's the sort of game you can't play just once in a sitting. Number 8, Tapestry. A lot of people will try to make the claim that this is a controversial love or hate release from Stonemaier, but the high overall rating on BGG suggests otherwise. This was a big hit for them, and I'm definitely among the fans. The release of the new expansion ensured this got to the table several more times since initially learning it. Number 7, Just One. 2019 was a great year for party games, and Just One was another one that saw regular play with my family. My oldest son was a particular fan and got quite obsessed with it for a while as we continually failed over and over to score well on the ranking chart. Number 6, Horrified. One of my top games of 2019, it was easy to get Horrified to the table again in 2020. This game is just crying out for an expansion with more monsters to defeat, and I'm surprised we haven't gotten one already, though. Hopefully soon. Number 5, Carpe Diem. It's a testament to this game's greatness that Aaliyah keeps releasing new editions so rapidly in an effort to get the graphic design of its production right. I'd probably buy it again if they deluxeified the components, but in the meantime, I'm planning on making do with my black magic marker adjusted 1st edition. Additional plays were helped by the game's release on Yucatan, a very nice implementation. Number 4, Blackout Hong Kong. Like Tapestry, this game's high overall ranking on BGG indicates this game was way more successful than the vocal detractors would like to indicate. And the more I play this one, the more I appreciate it as well. I played it a bunch solo over the year, and it was one of the first games I taught to me and my wife's best couple friends when we got together recently. At this point, I'm going to slot Blackout Hong Kong in as my second favorite Fister, right behind Expedition to Newdale. Number 3, Clans of Caledonia. With its release at BGA, Clans became one of the go-to games for more than one of my online gaming groups. The implementation is excellent there and handles a lot of the bookkeeping stuff very smoothly. It helped me finally figure out how that connected settlement scoring was supposed to work too. And after having so much fun with it online, it became one of my many COVID purchases as well, and my wife and I have enjoyed it in its physical form too. Number 2, Underwater Cities. There were many reasons why Underwater Cities became one of my highest ranked games that stood the test of time. The release of the excellent expansion helped, and it was one of the first games my live groups played when we started meeting again. The release of the game on Yucatan ensured it was a go-to game for my online groups too, and its brilliant solo mode kept me bringing it back to the table on my own as well. And that just leaves number 1, Glenmore 2 Chronicles. Now that I'm deep into the exploration of the various chronicles, I can say with complete assurity that Glenmore 2 lived up to my expectations and surpassed my hopes. The fun I had with it in 2020 made it an easy decision to make it my first perfect 10 rated game in several years, and I've moved the game into my top 10 of all time, the first shakeup in that ranking in an even longer time. Glenmore 2 is a perfect game, and backing the new Kickstarter expansion was also an easy decision. Well, that will do it for episode 82. Thanks for listening. Feel free to join the Out of the Dust Podcast Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Follow the podcast on Twitter at OutofTheDustBGG. Leave a comment at the Guild, PM me on BGG and our user handle Radagast14 or user handle AnnLee14. Or email me at radagast14@CenturyLink.net. And join the Out of the Dust conversation yourself at our monthly geek list at BGG. Alright, play me out, Ananda!